A really, really great first step on Tuesday. Congratulations to you. And as we were just talking about, I remember last year when we were talking about all of these weaponized charges against President Trump, the weaponized justices and judges who were seemingly targeting President Trump. And we talked about the remedies for these types of things, what you can do with these activist judges. And one of the main solutions that a lot of members of Congress brought up was impeachment. So it seems to me like this was a very, very obvious step in finally bringing some accountability to the judiciary. Do you think that this sends messages to other activist judges too?
Oh, it absolutely does. And it tells the message that we have oversight authority over lower federal courts, like Judge Boasberg's D.C. Circuit Court, and we're actually going to use it. We're not going to tolerate judges who decide to take their robes off and act as political actors on behalf of the Democrat Party. We're done with that. So Judge Boasberg, I think, deserves to be impeached for his role in facilitating the Arctic frost investigation and going out of his way to hide what the federal government was doing at the time.
Absolutely. And for our audience, just walk us through these articles, because there were a number of Republicans who I can imagine personally they felt like their privacy was invaded. But walk us through what's in these.
Well, let's take a step back and walk through the timeline here. Remember, Arctic frost was the investigation initially launched by the FBI, and it was an investigation to go after people who they believed were trying to overturn the results of the 2020 election. And it very quickly, and I think this was the purpose of it, morphed into a massive fishing expedition. They went after, this is the same investigation that raided Mar-a-Lago, that surveilled Representative Scott Perry at his home and then seized his phones, that seized President Trump's phone and Vice President Pence's phone. This is the investigation that went totally off the rails. And remember, 3 days after President Trump announced that he was running for re-election back in 2022, Jack Smith was appointed head of the Office of Inspector General, or appointed by the Office of Inspector General to be special prosecutor, which would be overseeing this Arctic frost investigation. And then from there, the gates got blown wide open. They started going after and subpoenaing just about every single major conservative group under the sun, including issuing subpoenas to surveil the phone records of sitting United States senators. There's about 20% of Senate Republicans were surveilled as part of this investigation. And Judge Boasberg's role in this was, from what we know now, and remember, this is an active investigation that the Senate Judiciary Committee is doing and that the House Judiciary Committee is working on as well. But from what we know now, Judge Boasberg signed off on non-disclosure orders for at least 8 of those subpoenas. Basically, what Judge Boasberg said is he went to cell phone carriers and he said, the federal government, the FBI, is subpoenaing specific phone records of these U.S. senators. Do not tell them that we're looking into their phone data. That is such an egregious abuse of power. It is a flagrant weaponization of the courts, and he did it in his own words, saying that we believe, or Senator Cruz will obstruct evidence and tamper with this investigation. He had no basis for making that determination whatsoever, and yet he did it anyways to hide what the FBI was doing in weaponizing the federal government against conservatives. This is so far beyond the pale. And it's time for these judges to be held accountable. They are not agents of the Democrat Party. Their job is to be impartial arbiters of justice, and we're going to hold them accountable for this.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like they do think they are agents of the Democrat Party. What do you make of Chief Justice John Roberts' comments? He said that impeachment is not an appropriate response to judicial disagreement. It should go through the normal appellate process. But like you said, I mean, the inferior court system is under the purview of Congress.
It is, and that is part of our checks and balances. Justice Roberts mentioned that back in March, whenever I filed initial articles of impeachment against Judge Boasberg, this same judge, after he demanded that President Trump turn a plane full of Tren de Aragua terrorists around midair that he was deporting under his plenary constitutional authority and under the statutory authority under the Alien Enemies Act. He had full power to do that. But this judge demanded that President Trump deposit those illegal aliens, Tren de Aragua terrorists, back into the United States. That was a flagrantly political ruling. It was so far beyond any constitutional or legal justification. So I filed articles back then against this judge. What I would say whenever there's some pushback against impeaching judges is that this is Congress's constitutional authority. It's a core part of our separation of powers. These judges are not kings unto themselves who don't answer to anybody. They answer ultimately to the rule of law and to Congress, who oversees them, to make sure that they're executing their duties appropriately. But what we're seeing now with Judge Boasberg, the articles that I just recently filed against him, is far, far worse than even what we saw back in March. But I would ask Judge Boasberg if he would explain, or if any of the courts would explain, why Tren de Aragua terrorists appear to have more constitutional protections than sitting United States senators. I mean, this is such a glaring comparison in how Judge Boasberg treats Tren de Aragua illegal alien terrorists versus how he treats and interacts with sitting United States senators.